Hi, my name is Lindy Cowling. Welcome to my channel. My website is www.lindycowling.co.uk. My email is info@lindycowling.co.uk, and the way to contact me for sessions, media or other would be via that email address, please. Nice to be back. Been off camera for about 3.5 weeks for various reasons, but it's nice to be back on here again now, and I hope you guys are weathering the storms. That's metaphorically speaking, intensity speaking, and weather-wise. The title of the video today really is something that has been coming to mind to me for the last couple of weeks, but also because I do have some clients on my books that are experiencing what I'm about to talk about. And as you know, this is an experiential channel, which means everything I talk about, share, channel, inspire with, whatever angle I'm coming from there, when it's experiential, it means that I've lived through it, experienced it personally, professionally, or worked with people that are going through these experiences, have gone through these experiences. So one way or another, I am talking from experience. 99% of the information on this channel is what I've directly experienced personally as well. That last 1% being what I have learned about through working with clients all over the world that are going through awakening experiences. So the title of this video is What happens if my twin flame dies? What happens if my or a twin flame dies? So part of what I'm going to speak about here is through working with a small percentage of clients that I've had the pleasure to work with that have experienced this, but I'm going to come at this from two angles. So I'm going to talk about when a same soul aspect or same soul connection actually physically dies, and when a same soul aspect or same soul connection, let's say, switches offline to who they are. So I'm going to cover the first one first, and also, share from a personal, professional perspective, but also, as you know, if you're a regular follower to this channel, much of my input comes direct from the heart, or direct from source in the heart. So sometimes I'm not quite sure how it's going to come out until it's come out, and those of you that have been following my channel for the last 4, nearly 5 years will know what I mean by that. So where shall I start? Let's start at the top. To meet an aspect of someone that you directly match with is one of life's most amazing experiences, and also a fast track to one's own ascended, embodied evolution. When one meets someone that they have a profound connection with, and by profound connection, this would mean twin flames, soulmates, catalysts, spiritual catalysts, ascensionary soulmates, awakening connections, conscious connections, just to name but a few. when one experiences a connection like that, only part of the experience is about how they feel about that particular person, that particular being. So only part of it is about how much they love them and feel for them, how much they care for them. That's only part of it. The main crux of what is taking place in that whole relationship paradigm, especially the new relationship paradigm, is that each of these connections have the potential to raise your consciousness, to encourage you, nudge by nudge, gently, to come into your heart portal, your elevated rungs of consciousness, to awaken to the reality of who you truly are, to awaken to your creative potential, which is an aspect that many people don't realize they have, and to expand one's consciousness so that you are making conscious decisions, creative decisions. You are walking your own mastery, wide awake, minus your belief systems, minus your programming, minus some of the detrimental life experiences, minus some of those old soul wounds, minus the old baggage, actually the unconscious in all forms becoming conscious. The unconscious you becoming conscious. So all of these connections without exception, so this is not just twin flames, all of these awakening connections without exception can dramatically fast track you into an awakening heart consciousness, to ascend your consciousness into the heart portal so that your consciousness raises within the human vehicle as a human being. This is the primary concern of you as consciousness and of you as souls, as beings. So the love, the feelings, the chemistry, all of those things can be and are very often present there with it, and you feel what you feel and you're experiencing what you're experiencing, but the main, let's call it agenda of you as spirit essence, of you as life force, of you as souls, is to expand your awareness and to become creator beings through the source and the love and the bliss and the purity of the consciousness of your quantum hearts in this lifetime. To be it, to walk it, to breathe it, to live it. And these are main reasons behind many of the connections. Now, some of the connections do have soul signatures, shall we say, on them, blueprints on them, templates on them, or within them, that the way to really help one to come into one's full potential is via connecting with other people and expanding with those people, working with those people, best friends with those people, living with those people, marrying those people. Some of them are actually relationship templated, some of them are not, depending on what the connection is and depending on the actual evolution of the soul of the person or people in question. So this is the main purpose of the connection. So what happens if you connect with someone, a twin flame, which is an aspect of you having another life experience in another human body, a bit like sitting in multiple cinema screens at the same time, another aspect of you, it doesn't take away from you at all. You are you, you're your personality having that experience as well, but there's aspects of consciousness, unique expressions of consciousness that are intrinsically linked or part of the soul as an expression of consciousness coming down into other vehicles. What happens if you meet a twin flame? I'm going to say twin flame, but this also, it's fair to say, applies to other connections as well. This would be catalysts, again, soulmates, you know, conscious connections, matching consciousness, you know, the list is as long as your arm. I could go on all day about that. I'm going to use the word twin flames specifically, but I am also referencing those other connections as well. It's just simpler than keep repeating that long list. So you've met a twin flame. By this point, maybe you've fallen in love with them. Maybe they've fallen in love with you. Lots of metaphysical things, maybe Kundalini, great connection, life changes going on inside you, life changes going on inside them. Maybe you've shifted huge chunks of your life to accommodate this. Maybe you're questioning everything. Maybe your whole perception has shifted, your whole reality has shifted. And of course, you know, these things are meant to happen. That's what happens when you're going through an evolutionary awakening, an expansion of your heart consciousness. The blinkers have been taken off and you start the beginnings of finding out what life really is about and who you truly are. So you've met them, you have strong chemistry with them, intensity with them. Perhaps by this point you love or loathe them, because it can go either way, but let's lean on the side of strong feelings for them, loving them, caring about them. And then the unthinkable happens. They get sick, they get really sick, or suddenly out of left field they die. They die through various means. You know, this is in all sorts of ways. It could be accident, it could be illness, it could be suicide, you know, all the ways that people can pass over. In any circumstances, in any situation, even if it weren't a twin flame connection or any kind of spiritual connection or soul connection or awakening connection, it would be a dramatic shock to the system, and you would go through a process of grieving and a process of recovery from something like that. When it is a spiritual or soul connection, there is and are added dynamics to that, which makes it, I'm going to say, quite unique. There are all forms of grieving for those that we have met, those that we love, and those that have transitioned over to the other side, to the other dimensions, to heaven if you like. They've died. When you have a connection on a spiritual level with someone that this has happened to, I'm going to say the word twin flame, for example, or a soul connection, the added dynamic is really the depth and the intensity of the connection. Now, before I go any further, that is not, I don't want you to get the wrong impression here and say that I am quantifying or balancing one against the other and saying someone who's been married to somebody for 60 years and then that person dies isn't going to feel it as much as a twin flame that's met someone for 5 minutes, 6 months, couple of years, 3 years. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm doing is expressing that there are some unique differences in a way, but also similarities to, how can I put it? I'm going to say to conventional grief, while not being disparaging about that. You know what? We know where I'm coming from. There are just slight differences when you have connected on slightly different levels. Really, those differences are very much to do with that it is an awakening journey and an awakening process that has activated your energy field, you as a being, in a multi-pronged way, let's say in a multi-dimensional way. And when that trigger or that person or that twin flame, that you have all these energy dynamics running with, apart from as a human being, potentially and likely to be head over heels with one another by then, or at least feel you're in love with one another. There's strong intensity either way. When that suddenly is wrenched away from you now in the physical, and this is a video about when you've actually met them, it's important for me to say, so you've met them, you've interacted with them, you've been around them, it could be weeks, months or years. This is not someone, I'm not using this video as an example of someone you haven't actually met yet or had any physical interaction with. I'm doing it from the very more human perspective. When that physical interaction is suddenly gone, I mean overnight it's gone, you know, whether you had warning it was coming or not, it's gone. Apart from going through the conventional kind of grief that one goes through when one loses anyone, because of the energetic dynamic, many of those energetic dynamics don't suddenly cut off. So just like you would have somebody conventionally grieving for somebody they loved, and they go through a process, it takes time to go through a grieving process when that person's not around them anymore. When it's a twin flame or a connection like that, the energetics are in place. So I'm going to call it, like, the easiest way to describe it is like a grid work is in place. The energetics, the foundations are in place. Let's call it the network of energy between the two is in place. So that doesn't just suddenly switch off when one or the other dies. It's still there, depending on how far along the two have got. Well, either way, you know, the spiritual energetics are still there. The same would apply even if one twin flame walked away from the other and didn't come back, and there was no communication overnight, you know, for the rest of their time in this incarnation. The energetics are still there. So it's like they're all there. Whether they continue to tap into it or not, I'll get into in a minute. So because the energetics are still there, they are still energetically, shall we say, just as intrinsically involved with that process as they were if the person were in front of them, whether they had passed over, died or not. So that process is still running, and again I'm going to repeat, that process still runs also if the person hasn't died but they've walked out of your life, and I'll get into that in a minute. This makes it, in a way, I'm going to say, a unique kind of grieving, especially if you have been around that person and interacted with them for a while or for years. Because you do feel it, depending on what category you're in, you do feel it or can feel it on that soul level, like part of your own soul is no longer incarnate in this reality, but you also feel it, let's say, spiritually, because the energetics are still there, but you can be aware of them, let's say on the spiritual realms where the foundations and a lot of the energetics are in place. What I have seen with the dear clients that are on my books that have experienced the physical death of their connection or a twin flame is that in all cases the spiritual connection between the two has got even higher. When you think about this, this makes complete common sense, because they are spiritual connections, and that we're all spirit essence at heart, no matter who we are. But because it's the spiritual energy that runs the soul, or sorry, the show, well, and the soul, the spirit essence side of it, when they leave physical form and go into spirit essence form, it seems to take on a whole different quality. And what I have seen is that those same soul aspects or twin flames that have passed over can, if it is agreeable to the soul as a whole, the two of them, shall we say, as a whole, they can assist and facilitate the evolution and the process of the remaining twin flame considerably. Now, I've seen this through direct experience working with these twins that have a twin that is over into another dimension, and the actual heart energy or the spirit essence energy of the two, once the one that is earthbound, shall we say, has got through that grief, that very raw grief, the spiritual energy or the spirit essence energy of them seems to increase significantly. And I personally feel, and I've actually seen it, because obviously I'm a medium clairvoyant as well, so I can see it in multiple different ways and read energy in multiple different ways, that they assist. So the one that's on the other side that has died assists significantly, but not assists like coming back haunting them, although they can assist by appearing to them or coming in dream state, interacting with them if the person is open to that idea. I mean, they assist through the heart portal, through that love, through the source energy, through the spirit essence energy, to help the remaining twin to move forward, not just move forward as in recovery, and there is a process of recovery and grieving, but to expand and to use that energy within themselves for all the reasons it was meant to be used, in order not just for their evolution, but to help other people, to facilitate that process for other people. So in that sense, it is a beautiful thing, because it kind of validates, as it does with all passing over of everybody, whether they are in a soul connection or spiritual connection with someone or not. It validates that indeed us as consciousness, or us as spirit, is infinite, eternal, and we exist not only in multiple realities and multiple incarnations as multidimensional souls, but that in all dimensions, including the dimension we go to, shall we say, when we've finished or completed this physical one, in other words, what people call heaven, another dimension. Whilst that process of recovery and grief is raw, like it would be for anyone, and the uniqueness of the rawness is, especially if you've been around them physically, there is an awareness in the very early stages of that grief that is an aspect of you that is now gone into another dimension, and it brings a unique kind of grief with that. But also, as time goes on, a unique kind of joy with that, because you know and you feel in your heart and your consciousness and your awareness that actually there has been a change there because they're not physically in front of you and physically with you, but that the change has been that they are more within your heart perhaps than ever before, because they don't have the encumbrance of trying to do it through physical vehicles and physical lives and physical earthly complications. In other words, that bridge to one another and that access to one another is not only still there, but stronger than it ever was. So, not so much individual flames, but a bonfire, you know, a bonfire heart. It's the expansion of the totality or the entirety of the two within the one that still is earthbound, or I'm going to say the ones that are earthbound, because we now know you can experience more than once coming into contact with aspects of you as a being in more than one human vehicle, you know, more than two. I'm going to give you a little bit of a personal example here, and I've mentioned this on video before, but you may have not watched the video that I mentioned it in. Apart from experiencing from 2010, meeting an aspect in male form of me, and, you know, all the events that followed, which I've spoke about in great detail over the channel over the years. It also came to my awareness, one was last year, of an Indian, that's the country of India, aspect of me that I haven't met, but I have a friend now that's met 3 aspects of me, which is quite amazing, really. And she does know this aspect of me, which I'd identified in great detail before she said, well, I know who exactly that is, who you're talking about. So I haven't met them. I probably won't meet them in this life. I don't expect to. There is also another aspect, that a lady that used to live exactly where I'm living at the moment, and I met, I'm not going to say accidentally, quite synchronistically, by attending a spiritual group that I've only met her 3 times, that she was running, but straight away she just came over to me, and she didn't know me, she didn't know anything about me, didn't know about YouTube or anything, and she just came straight over and said, oh my God, have you realised who I am? And I just looked at her and smiled, and she said very quietly, so no one else could hear, I'm one of your aspects. I just laughed, because you get to a stage where I'm going to say nothing really throws you anymore. I've seen so many things, it's like a Harry Potter film. You just kind of take it on the chin and see, okay, use your own discernment and your own feeling on that. And, you know, after meeting her 3 times, the whole purpose of it, she said, she was trying to pass on her knowledge. She knows a lot about Chinese medicine and holistic things, and actually meet me before she died, before she was thinking she was going to die. Now, she hasn't died yet, but she is in excruciatingly poor physical health, and she actually wrote me a letter, because the group hasn't been able to get together since then, for all sorts of reasons. I guess if it was meant to be, it's meant to be. And this was a lady, when I met her at the physical group, the spiritual group, it transpired that she'd lived where I'm living for 9 years, and actually ran this as a healing retreat, where I've only been, I moved in here February, so what are the odds? You know, it's amazing, really. She wrote me an amazingly touching letter, which I burst into tears when I read this letter, because it was so heartfelt. saying she was so glad that we got those 3 occasions to meet, so that she could pass that on, because she was expecting to be extremely ill and perhaps not be here by the end of this year. And you can see when I'm saying it, I mean, you know, we only met 3 times. I'm kind of filling up a little bit here. And some of the words she used were beautiful and very heartfelt. And, you know, you can see it coming here, look. And this was someone that I didn't, wasn't physically involved with, or physically in love with as a human being, or physically attracted to that way, but the spiritual aspects were there. And because of course I'm so much more balanced than I was in 2010, wasn't triggered at all by this person, and in fact it was quite magical, really. And this lady made me something and sent it in the post as well with a letter, and it was just you know, very, very touching. And I've mentioned before, you know, sometimes when you have a soul aspect that is suddenly unwell, it can have an effect on your health, especially when you've met physically, or say your health isn't great. And it was interesting, there has been a few aspects of that lately. And at the same time, let's say the original male aspect, I had the pleasure of working with somebody just a few weeks ago, a lovely lady who's a medium herself, psychic medium herself, who at the end of her session again said to me, can I just say something about your male, the male aspect you were with a long time ago? I said, yeah, you know, it's the end of the session. Sometimes clients, you know, especially if they're psychic, pick up on things as well. And actually what she said, you know, I'm going to spell out what she said. She basically said, you know, he was very unwell before you met, got very well when you met, but was very unwell, really deep at heart again. And basically spelled out the only reason he was alive is because he watches me on YouTube. Every week or every few weeks. Now, this didn't come as a shock to me, because I kind of knew it in my heart of hearts anyway. It is an extraordinary thing which makes me smile a little bit. It is an extraordinary thing that out of 4 soul aspects, let's say same soul aspects, if we go along with that premise that we're all coming from that same, on the soul level, that same place there, and I don't know that the one in, well, I do know that the one in India actually wasn't particularly well, with muscular skeletal things. That I don't know now, but that was a year or 2 ago. That's at least 3 aspects then that have been suffering physically for some time now, and it's intriguing, because I've actually been, you know, it's been spelled out to me 2 out of the 4, you know, maybe going over to the other dimensions, you know, maybe leaving this dimension. So that's as I gain more input on this, let's say, put it this way, I'm just going to share more on that side of it, because what my mind is very, I question a lot of things, and I think it's healthy to question things, and it does make me wonder really what happens if lots of same soul aspects, or lots of aspects of twin flames, all pass over in the same period of time. My theory on this, now this is only a theory, because of course it hasn't happened to me yet. My gut feeling is they don't all go at once. So say you had a sunflower, say the whole twin flame, the whole soul is a sunflower, and then fractals or petals, each petal is a fractal, starts dropping off and going over to the other dimension, passing over. I don't get the impression that the whole lot go, and that every petal, every aspect of twin flame in every reality, in every incarnation, or all in these incarnations now, in the various countries, in the various lives, all suddenly pop their clogs and all go at the same time. That's not my gut feeling on it. It's not my gut feeling on it. My gut feeling on it is that one or two of those twin flames as a whole, or the whole group, one or two of those fractals, perhaps go on and carry the can, or carry the mission, or carry the format, or carry on behalf of the whole sunflower or the whole soul as an entirety. That's my feeling on it. That on a soul level a decision is made, and one or two or maybe more of them do go forward, even if they're unknown to one another physically, while the others go. I don't know this to be fact, and I will really only know it to be fact if and when I hear that the aspects of me that I know of are passing over, and I don't happen to pass over. You know, if one day there's an announcement on my video channel, guess what? Well, then you'll know, oh, Lindy's theory was completely incorrect. And, you know, she's actually gone over as well. So it looks like they all went over. They all came to do what they wanted to do or needed to do on behalf of humanity or whatever. And now they've gone. That's not my gut feeling on it. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's not my gut feeling on it. I feel that there's a representation of the soul, you know, that continues forward, and the others that go over contribute to the whole. And that would make sense with the lovely lady that I met that feels she's an aspect of me, and I feel that's, you know, is probably correct there, is that was why she was so emotional and heartfelt about sharing why she could, because she's shared with another aspect of her, and it's all like ingredients for that cosmic cake. She's thrown the ingredients in so that we can rise, you know, and it makes me a little bit, you know, again, you know, quite, you know, it's quite heartfelt. So, you know, watch this space. I'll update you on that as I know more on that side of it. The video's going on too long here, so in the last few minutes, what I'm also going to say is, you know, when I introduced it at the beginning, in the last few minutes, you can experience, of course, which is like a death, and I defy anyone to say otherwise, having experienced it myself, and I know how challenging that could be and how challenging it was to come through that time. It's like a death when one or the other of you walk away from a powerful, strong connection, a spiritual connection, a soul connection, a bit of both. When it's a sudden overnight thing, whether it's expected or unexpected, one or the other of you suddenly are absent from one another's lives. There is profound grieving that goes with that. There is profound shock that goes with that, soul shock that goes with that. There's also soul shock with the death, of course, of a profound connection, a twin flame or other. Again, you know, I am going to compare it to that. Some people who've never been through that will say, oh, it's not the same and it's not a death. It is a death. It's a death to how you thought your life would be, how you thought it would turn out. It's a death to seeing that person regularly, regular communication. It is still a shock to the system, and especially if it's a long term, you know, it runs into years, or, you know, for the rest of your lives, living lives. And so I think it's important in a way to include that in there, because it's almost like not giving the respect that deserves, and, you know, the respect for the people that go through something like that. Yeah, I can be analytical about it and give all the million of reasons that I've given on YouTube before and on these videos of why people react the way they do and feel the way they do and what they're caught up in. But I'm focusing very much, as well as the energetic aspect here, on the human aspect of it. And we cannot be disrespectful about that. At the end of the day, we are human beings going through these evolutionary processes. It hurts, it sucks, it's a shock, and in a way it's like a death. It's like if you come away from anyone and suddenly they're not in your life anymore again, or on a regular basis, or you know, it's suddenly gone. That's dramatic. When you have a profound evolutionary awakening process going on with them, or as a result of them, it's important for me to say that process continues. Whether they are there or not, or in communication or not, the process continues. The only one that can derail it is you. You can get lost in your own grief, you can get lost in your own feelings, you can get lost in your pain body, you can get lost in your soul wounds, you can get lost in your inner child, you can get lost in numerous places, all of which I've highlighted on this channel to try and help you get unlost and to try and help you navigate your way through that maze when you can't see which way is up, when you're caught in that emotion. So yeah, you know, the last thing I'm going to say here, because this video is going on way too long, is these profound shifts and changes, you know, can be the making of you eventually. It will be hard to see it like that when you're going through that raw grief in the early stages, but it can be the making of you. It can evolve you in your consciousness and spiritually more than you would have evolved had it not taken place, had your connection not disappeared, or you disappeared from your connection, you know. Also, you know, the last thing I want to say, that death rebirth thing, that's not a literal death rebirth, but it's a death to who you thought you were and you thought the world was, the death to your old perception, a death to the old programming, old belief systems, and a rebirth to who you are and the true reality, really. If I use that sunflower analogy again, when the sunflowers come out at a particular time of year, they're beautiful, it's all connected, the sunflower, the fractals of the petals as a whole. But it would be nowhere near as vibrant or as tall, it would not rise in the same way if there wasn't some, as part of the process, a kind of going back to life force, going back to source, and then the following year coming back twice as amazing as it was before. There is a process of nourishment and growth and expansion that takes place throughout nature, throughout life, throughout earth, in all senses of the word. And perhaps what I've been talking about in this video is kind of part of that. If you've experienced that or are going through something like that, perhaps it's while giving it full respect for what you're experiencing and thinking and feeling, and taking your time to go through that very raw grief. Perhaps as you come through that, it's a different way of looking at things. There's a continual process of feeding back and re-nourishing and expanding that takes place here. And that continues with or without these connections that you love in front of you, wherever they are, whether they're in the etheric realms, you know, the energy realms, whether they're in heaven, whether they're in other dimensions. We know the bottom line here is we are eternal, infinite. Can't end it better than that. And yet it never ends. But the video does. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for supporting the channel, me as the channel, in all the ways that you do. I appreciate the subscriptions. I appreciate the views. I appreciate you booking sessions. I appreciate the lovely feedback. And I appreciate the donations. Look after yourselves. I love you and leave you. Bye.